Hello there. I'm Kelly Jensen. I work in the Library and Archives at the California Academy of Sciences. I am a speaker and fellow at Odd Salon. And I'm going to tell you a little story about the glory days of state-sponsored ostrich theft. So when the Titanic sank in 1912, the most valuable cargo on board was a shipment of feathers bound for New York. It was insured for $2.3 million in today's money, because in 1912, the only thing worth more by weight than diamonds was feathers. And the reason for this was the hat craze. Everyone needed feathers on their hats. They needed to be super big and fluffy. Sometimes people had entire birds on their hats. It was this ridiculous thing. And ostrich feathers were the most profitable because they were the most fluffy. And South Africa was the ostrich farming capital of the world at the time. Ostrich feathers were its fourth largest export after gold and diamonds. And the town of Oosthoorn was the epicenter of this because a group of Lithuanian Jews who were fleeing Tsarist rule had ended up in this weird town in the middle of the desert and started ostrich farming and became incredibly profitable. And the town is still full of feather mansions that were built with ostrich farming profits. But there was a problem because the Americans had started breaking into ostrich farming, and they were looking like being really good at it. And so South Africa knew that it needed an edge to compete. And they thought that that edge might be the legendary Barbary ostrich plume. Now, Barbary ostrich plumes were twice as fluffy and therefore twice as profitable. Some Barbary ostriches had been imported into the South African breeding stock decades before, but no one was really sure where they came from. So South Africa decided that what it needed to do was fund an expedition to go and find these Barbary ostriches. So they got who else to head this expedition but agriculture professors, of course. So they had a hot tip that maybe the ostriches came from Nigeria. So they went off to Nigeria and they hired about 100 local guys to carry all of their stuff. And you just know that these guys spent the rest of the expedition just going, oh my God, white people. So they set up near a feather caravan, near the trade routes, and they start checking all of the feathers coming in. There was a local custom of plucking the ostriches completely bald, so that was weird. So they're looking for the Barbary ostrich feathers. They finally have some come in on one of the feather caravans, but the problem is that they've come from over the border in French military territory. So they ask the French if they can buy some ostriches, and the French say no. And so they cable South Africa, and they're like, so what do we do now? And South Africa, the thing about it is that it's only been like a real country for like a year, and they don't need trouble with France. And so they hem and haw over it for a while, and then they finally cable back, and they're like, okay, well, you can liberate some ostriches, but if you get caught, we never heard of you. So the problem with this delay is the Americans have now heard about the expedition, and they're following the South Africans trying to buy the same ostriches. So they start like buying up junk birds, like trying to trick the Americans into buying the wrong ostriches. So now they're dodging American spies, French officials, and the Tuareg raiders that keep attacking them. They finally acquire 156 live ostriches and then realize that they now need to get these very large, angry birds across the Sahara Desert. So they build these little pens out of sticks and just frog march these birds, basically like 800 miles back to Lagos. So that was fine. And then all they had to do was get them onto the ship. Now, the fun fact about ostriches, they're not good sailors. So rough seas make them flip upside down in their pens, and like if they stay that way, they die. And so like everyone on the way back is on 24-hour watch listening for the sound of upside down ostriches in distress. But they make it back, and it's awesome because they're gonna be feather millionaires, and everything is great. And then like a year after they get back, the entire ostrich feather industry collapses. So the reason for this is basically the Model T, because you cannot wear a giant stupid hat in an open-top automobile. Doesn't work. And the other real nail in the coffin of the ostrich feather industry was World War I. And it was because women started taking jobs as nurses and drivers, and they needed sober, practical clothing that they could actually wear and get their jobs done. So the feather industry collapsed. The boom was over basically as soon as it had begun, leaving behind it a legacy of ridiculous photos and one very nearly forgotten story. Thank you very much.